The Pacific Ocean, once a symbol of vast, open waters and global trade, is now echoing with the rumble of warships, stealth bombers, and rising tensions. From Guam to the Taiwan Strait, from the Philippines to the Spratly Islands, the United States and China are drawing red lines across blue waters. Each naval maneuver, each military drill, each aggressive statement, inches the world closer to something unthinkable, a war between two superpowers. But how close are we, really? And what moves are happening right now, in secret or in plain sight, that could change history overnight? Let's dive in. The flashpoint, Taiwan Strait. The Taiwan Strait has become the most dangerous 110-mile wide waterway on Earth. China considers Taiwan a breakaway province. The US views it as a democratic partner, and is increasingly backing that claim with muscle. In 2025 alone, the US has sailed more than a dozen warships through the strait, calling it a freedom of navigation operation. China, in response, has scrambled fighter jets, launched missile tests, and staged mock invasions on its side of the strait. Here's the core issue: Xi Jinping has vowed reunification with Taiwan, by force if necessary. President Biden has said the US will defend Taiwan militarily if attacked. Two nuclear powers. Two red lines. One narrow strait. Taiwan's defense minister recently warned that Chinese invasion drills have moved beyond exercises and into real-world planning. Meanwhile, US generals have predicted war by 2027, or even sooner. China's Pacific strategy, belt, bases, and blue water navy. While much of the world has watched China build roads through Africa and railways across Asia, Beijing has quietly executed a military vision in the Pacific. China's string of pearls naval strategy is no longer just theory. It's reality. Beijing has now built 7 artificial islands in the South China Sea, complete with missile silos, airstrips, and radar stations. These bases violate international law, according to the 2016 Hague Tribunal. China ignored that ruling. In addition, China now boasts the world's largest navy by ship count, over 370 vessels, a growing fleet of nuclear submarines, new stealth destroyers and hypersonic anti-ship missiles like the DF-21D, dubbed the carrier killer. Its focus? Denying US access to the first island chain, projecting power across the second island chain, and ultimately controlling the Pacific up to Guam. The US response: counter-containment. The United States is not sitting idle. With AUKUS, the US, UK and Australia have launched a historic naval pact, transferring nuclear-powered submarines to Australia and expanding joint drills. In June 2025, the US Navy staged the largest carrier exercise in decades, sending 3 carrier strike groups through the South China Sea alongside forces from Japan and the Philippines. The Quad Alliance, US, Japan, India, Australia, has also expanded its naval footprint, staging joint surveillance operations and cyber drills. Forward bases are being rearmed. Guam has become a fortress, with THAAD missile defenses, bombers, and long-range drones. Subic Bay, Philippines, is back in US hands for staging. Japanese islands are hosting new radar and artillery systems aimed squarely at Chinese expansion. America's goal is clear: prevent China from dominating the Pacific. The economic and strategic stakes. The Pacific Ocean isn't just about military hardware, it's the lifeline of the global economy. Roughly 30% of all global shipping trade flows through the South China Sea. Nearly all tech supply chains, including the semiconductors that power your phone, car, and defense system, depend on Taiwan. If war breaks out, the global supply chain could collapse. Oil tankers and cargo routes would be rerouted or destroyed. The world could lose $5 to $10 trillion in GDP in the first year alone, according to RAND simulations. Financial markets have already started pricing in Pacific risk premiums. Insurance rates on Asia-Pacific shipping routes have spiked 18% since March 2025. The Taiwanese stock index sees volatile swings every time PLA jets cross the strait's median line. US and Chinese defense stocks are up 30% year-to-date. The risk of miscalculation. the scariest part. This war may not start with a declaration. It might begin with a mistake. Just one misfired missile. Unresponsive drone. Aggressive radar lock. Or even a naval collision. There have already been 3 near-miss encounters between US and Chinese destroyers in 2025 alone. Former Admiral Mike Mullen recently warned Congress, "We are one hot-headed pilot or misinterpreted signal away from a full-scale crisis." And remember, both sides are now using AI-driven drones, autonomous ships, and cyber warfare, where attribution is difficult and escalation is fast. The propaganda war. In both nations, the media is preparing citizens for confrontation. In China, national TV glorifies PLA naval drills. Patriotic songs now feature aircraft carriers and Taiwan. State media frames the US as a colonial power unwilling to share the Pacific. In the US, campaign ads accuse China of economic warfare and stealing secrets. Politicians from both parties demand a hard line on Taiwan. Pentagon reports are leaked, hyping Chinese AI weapons and space-based missile systems. This battle for hearts and minds is fueling nationalism on both sides. Historical parallels, Cold War on water. We've been here before. In different waters. The 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis nearly plunged the world into nuclear war over missiles just 90 miles off the US coast. Back then, cooler heads barely prevailed. Now, it's China building missile bases, but in the South China Sea, Paracels, and near Taiwan. Historians warn, the U.S. Soviet standoff took decades to resolve. The U.S. China standoff has far fewer channels of communication. And the timeline for conflict is accelerating. Part 8, What happens if war breaks out? If open war begins, scenarios vary, but none are good. Naval showdown, carrier groups clash in the Philippine Sea, hypersonic missiles are launched at bases in Guam and Okinawa. Cyber first strike, ports, satellites, and banking systems are disrupted within hours. Taiwan invasion, China blockades or invades Taiwan. The US intervenes militarily. Proxy escalation, conflict spreads to allies, Japan, the Philippines, Australia. Best case? A limited regional war. Worst case? A full-scale World War III, possibly involving nuclear weapons. Is war inevitable? No, but the window for diplomacy is shrinking. Top analysts at Size and Rand believe 2025 to 2027 is the danger zone. The reasons? Xi Jinping's ambition to secure his legacy. US presidential election stances hardening on China. Taiwan strengthening independence. And a Pacific now filled with weapons, tension, and fear. Still, there are off-ramps, military hotline reactivations. Diplomatic summits through ASEAN. Trade cooperation on climate, chips, and pandemic response. Whether leaders choose war or wisdom, remains to be seen. The Pacific is vast. But in today's world, distance is no protection. What happens thousands of miles away, in island chains you've never heard of, could reshape the planet. China and the United States are staring at each other across a tense blue battlefield. Let's hope the future isn't written in torpedoes and missiles, but in treaties and peace. But hope is not a strategy. Stay informed. Stay aware. And stay ready.